Welcome to Widowed Too Soon, where real-life widows and widowers come together to share their stories of survival, faith, and the journey of finding hope in the darkest of times. Whether you're newly widowed or have been on this journey for some time, each week we're here to provide you with inspiration, practical advice, and the reassurance that you are not alone. You were made to not only survive, but thrive. And now here's your host, a woman who has walked this path herself, who finds solace in writing, joy in speaking, and freedom in dancing like nobody's watching. Michelle Bader Ebersole.
Welcome to Widowed Too Soon. This is Michelle Bader Ebersole. I'm so excited to be coming back again another week with a guest, which we'll get into that in just a minute. On the day that we are recording, June 23rd, it is International Widows Day. By the time you hear this, it'll be past that, but I hope that you took some time to learn about widows. This day is really about supporting each other. I put out a video. I just did it on TikTok today about facts about widows. There's 258 million. There's a lot of widows every single day. And in other countries, they are not treated as nicely. And so I just gave a little bit of awareness to today. And thank you for those of you who are listening all over the world, because I do know we're in over 100 countries. And know that on this International Widows Day, I'm thinking, and most importantly, praying for you all, because I love you all, my sisters and brothers. And let's get right into this show. You've heard enough about me in the episodes where it's just me. So today I am sitting down with Dr. Jerry Woodbridge. How are you today? Jerry, not doctor. I mean, I guess I could call you either. But how are you today, Jerry?
Good. Yes, Dr. Jerry Woodbridge.
Woodbridge. Okay. And where are you coming from in this country?
Woodland Park, Colorado. So I can look out my office window and see Pikes Peak.
Oh, I've been there once. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. I love Colorado. It's, gorgeous. Have you lived there your whole life?
No, but I've lived here the last 8 years.
Okay. Where did you grow up?
I'm kind of a kid that's traveled around a lot. So originally Texas was where I was born, and then we moved to Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh, and wow. You've been around.
I've lived in Virginia Beach. I've lived in a lot of places.
Wow. Is Colorado one of your favorite places that you've lived?
Yes, with the exception that now Indiana is my favorite place because that's where my grandchildren are.
Oh, of course. Yes, that makes sense. And what are you a doctor in?
Education with educational technology as a specialization.
Okay, that's awesome. I got my master's in education. I thought about going on, but I never did. But there's so much to learn in the field of education. So what does that mean? How does that translate for a job? What do you do, or what have you done in the past?
I'm right now, because I'm helping to take care of my mom. I am an adjunct assistant professor at Liberty University. Cool. And I've taught courses for them, but currently I'm working as a dissertation chair and committee member. So we help them get through the research study.
That sounds like a very important job. Very, very smart people do that.
So requires using your academic brain, not your creative.
Yes. And I met you through Ellen Ziegler. Did I say that? Ziegler? And is that some kind of connection with Liberty University?
Yes.
Doesn't she go there?
Or she also teaches there. She's also a dissertation chair. And we got pretty close a couple years ago after her husband passed away. And I sent her my first book, Trading My Size. So
so you're one of those widows that helped a new widow. Love that. Like, I always appreciate meeting widows who reach out and help. So let's hear more about your story. Let's back it way up to when you met your first husband. Tell us about meeting him, dating him, getting married, all that stuff. And what's his name, of course?
His name is David Woodbridge. And it was after I graduated from college. I started teaching at a Christian school at the church where David attended. And that's where we met because we were both in the singles group.
Cute.
David was pretty shy, so it took him a while to figure out that I was interested.
Yeah. Were you
And
like early 20s, something like that?
yeah, early 20s. So probably, I think, I think we got married at 21 or 22. It's been a
Okay.
while.
Yeah.
But anyway, he didn't come right out and ask me for a date. I had two roommates. We were living in the house that my parents had owned, and they had moved. And so he knew all the roommates. And he said, well, there's this Christian concert, this Christian comedian or whatever that is out. I'll get everybody's ticket if everybody wants to go. Yes.
Oh, nice.
Okay. So I don't know if you've ever heard of Mike Warnke, but he was the Christian comedian. And so my roommate both paid David for the ticket, but he would not take money for mine. So he was that shy. He was that shy.
Yeah.
So we started hanging out and going to revival camps and things associated with church. And finally, I just kind of pretty authentic. I just said, I like you, don't you? And that was it. then
Nice.
we were destined to be married. So
that's sweet. Tell me about like where you got married and what that was like.
got married at our church that we met at. It was
Sweet.
the University Boulevard Church of the Nazarene there in Jacksonville, Florida. And I was really nervous, couldn't eat during the whole. We had this big reception and I was so nervous, couldn't eat. But we went on a cruise for our honeymoon because it was during Christmas time. When I was going to college, I had met somebody that had gotten married at Christmas time. And I just thought, oh, that's cool. That's different.
Yeah.
So when you marry a teacher, you either get married at Christmas time or you get married in the summer.
True.
So,
yep.
So we were both excited. We said, let's get married at Christmas. Nice. It was a lot sooner than June. So.
Nice. And then what was life like when you got married? Like, did you have kids right away? Were you both working? Just tell us what that was like.
Pretty soon afterwards, we did have my daughter, Julie. So probably within the first 18 months or whatever, I found out I was, I was going to have a child. And so, we were able to have her. I had to be on bed rest during that time.
Oh, wow.
So, but we were fortunate because then later had four miscarriages or premature delivery.
Oh, wow.
So the Lord was already teaching me about loss at that time.
Yeah.
And so the first time I went to a Christian counselor and they said, okay, can you imagine your child in heaven? And, so I closed my eyes and I said, yes, Jesus is holding my baby. So, and that really helped me because as soon as I realized whose hands my child was in, what better person if I could not be the one holding my child?
That's beautiful.
So I learned the true, I believe scripture is living. It's the living word of God because no matter how many times we've read a scripture or studied it, we always find new meaning. So there's no other way it could be other than living.
Right.
So Proverbs 13:12 says, a hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is the tree of life. So we found another friend we had decided to change churches, so we started going to First Baptist in Jacksonville, downtown, and they're very, very family oriented. There was a lot of programs for our kids, so we decided to go there, and there I met another lady who had some issues with trying to have children, and she had adopted this little girl, Nikki. So her name was Kim, and uh, and we got to be good friends, and we started talking about, well, let's consider adoption, because we found out that my body just could not carry the child because my immune system would think it was, was not it. I guess anyway. I'm sorry. It's kind of like it's an autoimmune issue, so it would make me miscarry.
Oh,
So
wow.
enough said about that. But we chose to go the route of adoption. We went through two situations. One situation, the birth mother backed out, and that's okay. It wasn't our child.
Yeah.
The second situation, we got a call from we got a call from the lawyer's office saying that the mother had gone in premature delivery, but like 6 weeks out. So the baby was okay, she was okay. And that's when we were introduced to our son, Joshua. And so there's more to that story that we could tell another time. But it is a story of redemption. It's not perfect yet. I keep praying for the birth mother, but not a perfect situation. But my son now understands why the Lord had us adopt him. So, and he has 2 little boys of his own. Such a good dad. And that's one good thing I'll say about I could say a lot of good things about my husband, Dave, but he was a good father. He was a good husband. So, we still miss him 20 years later.
Yeah.
So.
And what did he do for work?
He had a biology degree and a chemist degree. So when I first met him, he was testing water all over the state of Florida to make sure that we weren't polluting. Then he began to work for a company called the St. Johns River Power Park. And then he was in-house, the one to test to make sure that we weren't polluting the St. Johns River as a result of creating power. So that's what he did. So he was very much a brainiac.
Yeah.
He loved to run. There's a funny story. He was very thin, kind of just a runner.
Yeah.
And he would sweat a lot. So, by the end of his run, he'd take off his t-shirt or whatever. And some woman this really offended him, cried out and said, "You need to be working on your upper body."
That's so rude.
It was so rude. But he had a good sense of humor. He took it in stride. He was just kind of like, well, that wasn't very nice. He had been a pastor's kid. So, he had a sister and 2 other brothers, and he was the 3rd child out of the 4. So, but yeah, it's one of those stories that makes me laugh when I share it, because it's kind of like, you're the guy, he's sweating, he's working hard, he's trying to stay in shape, and somebody says that. I just thought that was kind of rude, but
it's very rude.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So, so did you guys like taking vacations? Like, what kinds of things did you do for fun?
Definitely went to a lot of the camp services together. We did take the cruise for our honeymoon. We went up to Georgia, near the mountains in that area. So, but Dave was really more of a homebody. I was more the world traveler as far as
Yeah.
When I had an opportunity to take 12 middle school students to New Zealand and Australia,
Wow.
um, I signed up. It's through the People to People Student Ambassador Program.
Mm.
And because I was a teacher, they'd invited my daughter actually to go because she had gone on another trip with them. And then because I was a teacher, I said, hey, I've
Yeah.
always wanted to go to Australia.
Right. That's my dream country. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so I signed up to do that. So, he would stay home, he'd take care of, everybody else and, you
Yeah.
know,
That's awesome. So tell me about when life changed for you.
well, I had been working on my doctorate. So, I had finished my doctorate in 2003, but in 2004, I wanted to share the results of my research study. So I scheduled to be a roundtable presenter at the ISTE conference, the International Society for Technology and Education conference. And so Dave went with me. So this was kind of like after having children, this was one of those times where we got to go and do this by ourselves. So we went to um, Louisiana. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. You know
That's
that
okay.
that that town in Louisiana that everybody goes to?
Shreveport
No,
or
the
mm,
anyway has anyway. We'll just move on.
yeah. Uh-huh.
Anyway, he sat at the round table and he listened to me present. And this is for anybody who is a spouse or mother or parent or somebody of someone who is going through and getting a doctorate. My husband came up to me afterwards and he says, that's the first time I understood what you were doing. And this was days before he would go into the hospital.
Oh, wow.
So it was a real gift because he had sacrificed a lot so that I could go to school and do this.
Right.
And it was a gift to both of us that he would understand what it was that he sacrificed for. So we were there for a few days. We decided to leave a little early. Again, he's a homebody. And he knew the grass needed to be mowed. So we get home on Friday. He goes to mow the grass on Saturday. He's coming in from that and he says, I don't feel so good. I'm gonna lay down. This was kind of unusual for my husband. And then Sunday rolls around and we're always going to church. And he's like, I'm not able to go to church. So we stayed home with him because I was a little worried about him. And then Sunday night he calls me in there and he goes, Jerry, call 911. So I called 911. The paramedics came in. I'm not sure what's happening, but what came out of my mouth to the paramedics when they got him on the stretcher and rolling him out, I said his dad has had colon cancer several times. My husband looks at me like, why are you telling him that? Uh, but so we were in the hospital and they did do surgery because there was a blockage. We didn't know. So he went in the hospital on Sunday. Monday, he had the surgery. They removed what looked like a big tumor. Thursday, we had the diagnosis that he did have colon cancer.
Oh, wow.
And, they kind of said, this is what we're looking at. We've got to get him out of the hospital first, then we'll go into treatment. But that was Thursday. We found out the diagnosis. They had started putting him on dialysis because remember, he's a real thin guy.
Right.
But then his face started swelling up because his kidneys were not working correctly. And that was due to low blood pressure. So when we came in on Friday, they said we're not able to keep him on dialysis because of the low blood pressure. And so I'd gone in there with him about lunchtime, about noon. And all of a sudden, he had a heart attack.
Whoa.
So my kids were with other people at the time. So I had to call those people and ask them to bring my children to the hospital to explain what happened to their dad.
Did he pass away from the heart attack?
He passed away.
Oh, wow. So he had cancer and a heart attack?
The heart attack was due to the kidneys not working and the fluid. So that's what triggered it. And because of the low blood pressure. If he had been able to maintain his blood pressure, they could have kept him on dialysis and kept the fluid off. But because they couldn't keep the fluid off, that's what triggered the heart attack.
Okay. So this is a really short span of time, right? From the time
Yes.
going into the hospital. How long was that?
He'd gone into the hospital on Sunday. On Friday, he died.
Oh my goodness. Wow. That's very quick.
Very quick. So there was no, we had no time to prepare. You know, sometimes people who have illnesses or cancer or some kind of disease, a lot of times people are grieving while they're going through all those treatments and the process. But this was more of a shock.
Yeah. Wow. And how old were your kids at the time?
My son was 12. My daughter was 16.
Okay. Pretty much same as mine because mine were 12, 15, and 17. I mean, 12, 14, and 15. So very similar ages, very hard ages.
Very hard ages.
So a shock. And I mean, okay, so he passed away from a heart attack. Like what are you feeling? Like I mean, this happens so fast. What's life like for you?
Basically, you go into that survival mode where you're like, okay, I got to plan a funeral.
Yep.
You know, I have to take care of my kids. You know, I have to figure out the billing system that he used because that was one of the last things he told us. He told Josh, I need you to take out the trash. And he told me I needed to go to the bank for some errand or whatever. And so dealing with reality, you know, I never had to deal with bills, never had to deal with a lot of the things that he always took care of.
Yeah.
So anyway, and so I knew I should not do anything that first year. You know, that's all the counselors tell you this. You know, don't make any major changes.
Yeah, which I don't necessarily agree with. I moved 10 months after my husband died, and it was a good thing. So I don't think that's
sometimes
always,
it's necessity.
Yeah, I don't think it's always the best. I get it. I get where it started from, but I don't think it's always the best advice. Depending, it's all different. Anyways, back to your story.
No worries, no worries. No, I agree. It's kind of like sometimes, you know, sometimes people have to.
Yeah.
If you were in the military living on the base, you don't have a choice.
Right.
So, you know, I really grieve for those children and widows because they don't even have time to grieve before they have to do a major move.
True. Yeah.
So.
I haven't even thought about that. So, what was that first little while like for you? Did you have support? Did you have friends, family, church? Like, what was it like for you?
Yeah, I had some family, and my brother had kind of stayed a little bit later. My husband passed away on July 2nd, so then we had the funeral. My birthday was coming up, and I remember on my birthday I just had a migraine, so I did not want to celebrate, didn't want to do anything. It was kind of like that probably helped me because I'd been going. that whole time. And so basically that allowed me to shut down a little bit before having to pick up the reins again and get going. But after the first year, I needed to find employment. So then we moved to Indiana. And I always had this idea that moving to the farms of Indiana would be a healthy thing.
And did you have family there, or you just chose Indiana?
I chose the work.
Okay. And
because I had started adjuncting. I'd worked for University of Phoenix. I started working for Indiana Wesleyan University, just to try to help supplement some income. And there was a position available where I could be an assistant director for the MED online program. So that is what I did. And so I would say the first year, I'm a person who likes to stay busy anyway. So I did a lot of home projects. The home projects helped me sell my house so that I could move. Then I had a new job, had a new house. Grief was kind of put as much as possible on the back burner. Year 3 is when grief reared its ugly head. And it said, "You've been ignoring me too long. You can't ignore me any longer." So that's when I started doing a lot of journaling, because that helps me process my feelings. Does it help you?
Oh,
Michelle?
yeah. I've done it since I was 9 years old. I have journals.
Right.
So, yes.
I understand. So I was invited to go to a Christian Writers Conference because my work kind of was one of the sponsors for it.
Oh,
and
nice.
they had an extra opening. So I went to Indianapolis. I took my journals for some reason because I had no idea what I was supposed to do with this, but I took my journals and went to the conference, went to the sessions, scheduled a few meetings with people to talk to them. But at the end, I knew I was supposed to write the Trading My Sorrows book. And the Trading My Sorrows is actually, For the Joy of the Lord, is actually a song sung by Daryl Evans. Very upbeat song.
Yes, I can hear it in my head.
So I actually wrote to the artist and said, "Can I use your song title as my book title?" And I received permission for that.
Nice.
So at IW, Indiana Wesleyan University, there was a young widows fellowship group that met for lunch. And Vicki Rudisell is the one that would lead it. And she would invite, all the widows that she knew. And we would have lunch together. Sometimes people would come, sometimes they couldn't. But I found that when we shared our heart and our story, sometimes some of us were up, we could help those that were down, and sometimes we were down and we needed the encouragement, to be lifted up. So Trading My Sorrows is basically sharing our stories. So what I found with her, she wrote two chapters. I invited her to be part of that because she was such a vital part of helping me cope with being a widow. I also found other widows and widowers on the ballroom dance floor.
Interesting.
6 months after my husband passed away, I felt stuck and I needed to do something. I kept driving by Arthur Murray's studio. My daughter happened to be in the car with me, so she's the teenager. And I said, "Hey, Julie, just come in with me for moral support." Okay. The owner of the studio and my dance instructor, teacher, he was Egyptian. His name is Ahmed. And he saw two of us walk in. He said, cha-ching, cha-ching.
Mm-hmm.
But he also was one of these people. He knew how to be, he offered hospitality. When you walked in, he trained his staff and him, they hugged everybody. He would introduce any new people. He'd bring them over to me because of my personality.
Mm-hmm.
And say, hey, Jerry, this is so and so, and they just started class. Maybe you should dance with him or her, whoever it was. Uh, and that's where I was like, wow, I didn't realize I needed to be seen. I needed to be heard. I needed to be known for just being Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
And not Mrs. David Woodbridge. I mean, that's an
Right.
honor to carry that title, but I wasn't, he wasn't here anymore.
Right. So what kind of dancing did you start? Like, I'm guessing.
Foxtrot's my favorite, but foxtrot, waltz,
Fun.
salsa, the bolero, all the ones you see on Dancing with the Stars.
Nice. It's
Or
actually very common. Myself plus some other widows, we started line dancing when we became widowed. And then I met this widow recently. She came to my book launch and then she came to our event last week and she said her thing is square dancing. I was like, I love that. Like, we're all finding these different kinds of dance that really help to bring us joy and exercise. Like, it's good,
and
having that
social connections.
social connection too. Yeah, it's all of that. So I
Right.
love that. So you went in the studio and decided to sign up?
Yes.
Nice. And then
And
what?
5 months later, we're in Italy at our first ballroom dance competition.
That's so cool. You and your daughter, or just you?
Both of us. My
Oh, you both
daughter,
did. Okay.
my daughter is a competitor. She enjoys that. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm a social. I'm just like,
Yeah.
I just want to have friends.
Uh-huh.
I just want to have fun.
That's
So,
so fun that you guys did that together. I love that. I hope this is encouraging and inspiring widows who are looking for something new. Figure out maybe it's a kind of dance. I love that. Go into a dance studio, see what you can find out, or find out where there's line dancing. That's what we did. Find
right.
something that, or square dancing or whatever. That's why I always tell people, like, try to figure out like what your new hobby is, your new passion, because it can really help you. Like, two big things the first year, I would say, would be line dancing and paddleboarding. Those are the two things that I really got into, and I was thankful enough to find other widow friends to do those things with. And I still, two of my best widow friends, we go paddleboarding all the time. It's still something we love doing, and line dancing when we can. So I love that. That's awesome. So you got into that, and um, how were your kids doing? Like, their grief was, pretty immediate. There was no warning. How were they doing during that time, like the first couple years? What was that like for them?
My daughter was finishing up high school. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we did a homeschool situation with high school because she is ADD, attention
Mm-hmm.
deficit. So focusing, especially when you're grieving, is
Mm-hmm.
challenging.
Yeah.
So I found, I'm an educator, so
Right.
I could oversee her rest of her high school um, coursework, but I found that I needed to hire some tutors, to help her in the process.
Yeah.
So she still had people that she would meet with. Um, she was very involved with our youth group, and in the choir. They traveled a lot of times, but ballroom dancing, I think, was a refuge for her.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
When we moved, my son was going into 8th grade and had a little bit of a culture shock. Um, Small town, even though Marion was the bigger town than any others, um, there were a lot of other issues that I didn't think we'd have to face. He started having panic attacks.
Oh, wow.
After his dad died. But he never told me.
Oh, wow.
He was having them. So he tried to adjust, to this new culture, new schools, new high school, and he was getting himself in trouble. He started doing some not so legal things to help with the panic attacks.
Right.
So we got to a point where there was a lot of tension between both of us, because here I'm working at a Christian university.
Right.
High expectations for the whole family.
Yes.
But maybe not a lot of understanding about grief and how it can affect children. So he wanted to go back to Jacksonville. He wanted to go back and live with his best friend who had a father figure still in the house.
Yeah.
And the father was a big kid. So they had the little ATVs, they had all the fun stuff. Yeah. But in one argument, he basically told me, if you don't let me go back to Jacksonville, Mom, he thought he would do something drastic. So I had a choice to make, and I chose to let him go back. So I'd say there's a couple of years that we talked a little bit, but not a lot. I think Josh had to figure his own way. He was always a strong child, and he found a way to finish high school without going through high school. He took college courses, and was able to do that. But fortunately, I had some friends that were praying for me and for Josh, and one of them just said he'll be back. And so he came back just before his 18th birthday and moved to Marion, found work, fell in love with his current wife.
Oh.
And that's where my grandchildren are.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah.
That's great. Yes. So they all have to deal with grief in their own way. And I've found, as I have 3 kids still going through grief, like they all do it in their own way, in their own time, and it looks completely different. And
it does.
Would you say that some of that is the inspiration for the book that you recently wrote, Joy Overcame Sorrow? That's the one for kids, correct?
That is the one for kids. But what I'm finding that I think there are maybe 4 audiences for this book. The first one, I was actually challenged to write a book for children about grief because I actually wanted to present a speech on TEDx. And I wanted to present a speech on TEDx about how ballroom dancing helped me move through grief. I met with a group of businesswomen, and they looked at me like I have 3 heads because they did not understand. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
And so I started elaborating, and I said, I'm a teacher. I've worked with, with other children who've lost loved ones, like a 5th grader who lost his dad to cancer, but he was a rodeo rider. And, when I had him in 5th grade, it had been a few years, but he still had unresolved grief.
Yep.
So I explained that to this group of businesswomen, and they just said, well, we think you should write a children's book. I walked out of there. I was so annoyed. I was just
you're like,
that's not what I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm one that will rise up to the occasion for a challenge. And I said, well, let me try. I'll see what I can do. That was back in 2019. I did not know how much I did not know
Yeah.
about writing and what God's vision for the book was. Because honestly, it was kind of near the end where I said, okay, it's going to have a faith component to it. Because at first I was writing for the public school child in the library, that would get the book. But the Lord knows how to do things. And he told me back in September, he goes, okay, it's time to get it out there. So then all the pieces sort of fell together. And I had a better idea of what he wanted me to do with it. So back to your question. I'm sorry.
No, this is okay.
Talking a little bit. So the first audience is the child who's lost a loved one. But I had another little girl read it that's the same age as Joy, 4th grade. She read it, she gave me input, and she said, yeah, I think this would be a good book for children who have lost a loved one, but I think it's a good book for everybody. So, and I was like, bless her heart. She was also the voice on the book trailer. So the Lord brought children and other women across my path to help me with this. So September, I sign up. I'm going to self-publish through Hope Books. And, the lady is talking like it's going to take me 2 years to get through this. I said, no, you don't understand. I've been working on it for 4 years, off and on.
Yeah.
And she said, okay. So I was able to get the book ready June 10th. The book was launched.
Yay.
And
beautiful cover.
It is. It's got the butterflies. And Joy's actually a dragonfly girl. Her best friend Bella is the butterfly girl. But yeah, the butterfly represents new life, resurrection. The idea that Joy's going to be able to see her father again. Because she.
Oh, I was just going to say, can you give us a quick summary of the book?
Sure. Joy is 10 years old. She's riding her bike, her first solo ride to the community park with her best friend Bella. And, they're enjoying the ride. They're describing the scenery. Joy is a daredevil. She raises up her arms as she's going down a hill, riding the bike. And Bella is the cautious one and says, hey, Joy, if your mother saw that, we'd never get to solo ride again. So, but on their way back, they see a police car outside Joy's house. And there's a pit in her stomach. She doesn't know what this is all about. And she's got some, she's a daredevil, so she's going to find out what's going on. So she's going to ride back, but at the same time, she's a little concerned about what am I going to hear as she goes into the door. So she goes into the back door, parks her bike, and goes in the back door and calls her mom. And she can hear her mom kind of whispering on the telephone. And she hears, well, Billy, I got to go. Joy's here. Come as soon as you can. And then Joy is hot and sweaty from that long bike ride. She's filling her cup up a couple times with Kool-Aid and drinking it. And she notices that mom comes and sits at the table and puts her hands down like this. So she knows something is wrong. And then mom begins to explain to her what happens and how do you think a child would react? No, no, no. They go into denial. No, no, no. My dad was killed in a car accident. What does this mean? All these thoughts are flying through her head and she cannot express it. And she loves her daddy. So she's remembering all the good times and thinking about that. So the book kind of goes through her grief journey. And it talks about the never wills. Talks about, going through the funeral I want to see my daddy again. I just wish it didn't have to be in heaven. She talks about the strain on her friendship with Bella because Bella still has a dad.
Yeah.
So, the trouble she has in school with learning about fractions because she's still grieving. So that relationship with her teacher, and her teacher seems to understand. She has questions about God. She has questions about heaven. So she wants to talk to her pastor again. So she's finding, it's kind of modeling what kids can do as they're going through the process. Her cousin April gives her a journal just before they go to the funeral and says, you might want to write down the stories that everybody tells you about your dad so you can always remember them.
Yeah.
Yeah. and her cousin April is a chatty Cathy. So she's like, personality wise. So Joy they have to go through all the first Thanksgiving, the first Christmas, the first birthdays, because Dad was a big planner for birthdays. And he's a jokester. So some of the scenes that are described in there about the dad are actual things that happened with my husband.
Yeah.
So
there's always a little bit of I've written one fiction book and there's some real life in it, that makes
real
its
life
way.
tells it better. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes its way into it. So would you say this is I know it could be for everyone, but like as far as like reading level, like upper elementary? I'm just trying to for our audience to know like if their kids are the right ages for this.
4th through 7th.
4th through 7th. Okay. That was my question.
So I call that the middle readers, and it's just before they get into the YA, the young adult.
Well, this sounds like an amazing resource because this is something we don't have. Books that kids can read where they can go, that's me. Like my son was 5th grade when Luke died. This would have been perfect for him. And there was I don't think any of them have ever read a book like this. Like, it might even be something that is good for, older kids who might have been younger when they died. Like my kids, I'm
or
thinking
adults.
Or adults or anybody. It's very similar. I mean, totally different concept. But have you read the book Tear Soup?
I have not.
It is one of the best ones. Actually, somebody asked what's a good book for kids, and somebody suggested Tear Soup the other day in the Widow page. And it's about it's written for it's a picture book, but it's for adults really. But it's like Tear Soup, all these things being added to the soup. Anyways, just look it up. It's a good one. So totally different. Like this is more like for kids to read what you have, which I love too. But there's so few resources that I've seen. I haven't looked that hard because my kids were like getting older. But there's not a lot of resources for kids going through, parent loss. We have widow resources and things like that, but for the kids that have lost their parent, I definitely want my kids to read it, even though they're way older than that, but just they could identify with a lot of the concepts.
I think even my daughter has a little bit of unresolved grief.
Right. Yeah.
So and why I know that is I sent her my manuscript to read because she's also a writer, journal person. And she's like, I had to put it down after the first 2 pages. She goes, there were just so many mistakes. And I'm like, I know there weren't that many mistakes that you couldn't read that. But I let it go.
Yes. And tell me about, you wrote another book to go with this called Joy's Journal. Tell us about that.
Well, Joy's Journal has some prompts that go along with the book. So,
and is that for kids or adults or either?
I think it could be for either. Whoever reads Joy Overcame Sorrow, it could be used. But there's open-ended pages and prompts for the child to describe how they're feeling.
Oh, I love that. That is amazing. We need to get your book into like counselor's office in elementary school, to have as a resource and I know it's hard because my book is faith-based too. It's hard when it's faith-based, but you want to get it in mainstream. But I just see this as being such a great resource. Even, I'd love to see this as like a partner with so my goal is to get my book into hands of new widows. I'd love to see maybe we could find some kind of partnership where when there's a new widow, we could get my book and your book into the hands, like both of them. Like here's one for your kids and a journal, and here's one for you. And I just see I'm getting goosebumps thinking about this. Like there just needs to be something like that, because I would have loved that, to have a resource for me and my kids. I was given lots of resources for me, but not one for my kids. So I think this is a really untapped market that needs to be tapped. And I want to talk to you about later about maybe my nonprofit getting some of your books so I can make baskets because I'm giving my books to widows in my area. I'd love to have yours with it because I think it's such a great companion to it.
I think also instead of, I've already shared this with my book launch manager idea, but it's like, instead of sending a condolence card, send a book.
Exactly. Instead of sending flowers, that's going to be one more thing that dies. Let's give them a book. I'm all about that because I'm in the same place.
Yes.
Let's not just give them one more thing that they're going to watch die. I don't know when people are going to get that. We don't need to send flowers for when someone dies. It's not the best gift, but and we could talk about this, but one of my passions and the podcast that came out today, I talk all about, I had this burning passion to get my book into churches and to have this resource. But what if we could partner our books together and hey, you get both of these. When someone's widowed, can you imagine that? Being handed both of those?
That's
wow.
Yeah. That's where where you market it, probably. I'm learning all about this stuff. So probably funeral homes.
I know. Yeah. Unfortunately, I do know someone that owns one. I could talk to her, but it's sad. But I'm trying to get, so I'm really have this new fire burning inside me about, we are so in the US, so few churches do anything for widows. And widows are mentioned 103 times in the Bible, but yet so few. I could name one in my area, and we have a lot of churches here that do anything. When I was widowed, there were 0 in my area. That's why I started a group. And it's I'm feeling this passion, and I'm feeling like we could really partner together in getting something together for the adults and the kids, because that's so important. Anyways, I'm getting all fired up about this.
That's okay. You and I were young widows. I was a widow at 42.
Yeah, I was 41. Yes, we get it. we get what that's like, and so many people don't. And in fact, there was a church recently that was trying to decide whether to let me come present my books. It's a whole long story, but they were so misinformed that someone at the meeting, I wasn't there, but someone told me, "What? It's not like people are widowed every day." And I was like, someone actually said that, because we need a little widow education. We need a little widow education in our churches. And God calls us to take care of the widows and the fatherless. I remember reading, I'm like, that's me and my kids. That's me and my kids. And nobody gets it. And it's I get really fired up, because just like you, we've been we're not brand new widows anymore, but our heart is still that we have that passion for those brand new widows. It's we don't have to live in this world anymore, but we want to help those people. And so I feel like God's raising up an army of people who are going to be able to help the next generation of widows and the kids. And anyways, that's me fired up about, we got to do something in the churches about this.
I agree, because it's wonderful. It's a wonderful concept to be family focused, but you can't ignore members of your family.
Right. That's right. It just, it
So
gets me all fired up that there's so few resources. I did a poll and I think like 200 people participated in the Widow Too Soon page. And I was pleasantly surprised that 40% of the people said they did get help from their church in the form of grief share. And that's great.
it's not enough.
It's not, and it's not specific to widows. And so a lot of people said, no, I couldn't find help. No, I didn't get help, but I didn't look for it. There were a lot of people. There were a fair amount that said they did get help. But I was in one of those that said, no, I looked everywhere and there was no help for widows. And it's like, so I just feel this burning passion to get into the church. And like, I think I want to do a program similar to Grief Share, but different, just for widows. And like, I don't know. I don't even know where it's going to go exactly, but I can see having a book like yours as part of this because it's so important to have those resources. My kids I don't think any of them have read any books like that ever. So it makes me really passionate. Anyways,
there's not a lot out there. There's not a lot
no.
of writers who will tackle this subject.
Right.
Well, I'll say, like, what was the book? Bridge to Terabithia,
Oh yeah,
where the
I
boy
read that in
loses a
elementary
friend.
school. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
loses a friend.
Mhm.
But it's not the sole focus. With
Mhm.
Joy Overcame Sorrow, that's the focus.
Right. Oh, I'm so excited about this book. Like this is good stuff. If you're listening, podcast listeners, please get a copy of this book for your kids. I feel like it's going to be so good. And we'll have links in the show notes, but where's an easy place for them to find it?
Probably the easiest place is Amazon.
I was going to say, I'm guessing that's probably it.
Right. I mean, you can find the book also in Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, Walmart. I know our publisher has the bookstore Hope Books
Yeah, it's
.com.
good.
So
Yes, it's available. All those places.
it's
Please go
available.
get it. Is it on
They
Kindle?
can go. It is on Kindle and
Okay,
ebook.
good. Okay, perfect. That's good. Tell us a little bit more before we wrap up here. So I'm getting all fired up about widows and churches. Tell us a little bit more about like your writing journey, because I kind of want to go back to. I was still kind of unclear about your first book, Trading My Sorrows. Was that a co-written book, you and other people, like lots of people's stories, or what is that book?
It is kind of like a collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
I was the author and submitted it, for self-publishing, but I included Vicki Rudisell because she was our Young Widows Fellowship leader, and so she contributed 2 chapters. And then I went and interviewed some of the widows and widowers that I had found ballroom dancing,
Okay.
and got their story. So it is a collaboration of different lessons and things that people learned.
Okay, awesome. And is that one also on Amazon? Or are they all there?
It is on Amazon.
Okay, perfect. I love it. Well, I have just a few more questions. Kind of going back to your story, like what was the hardest part? Let's go way back. Like what was the hardest part of being widowed? Or was or is, current or past?
Feeling like I was alone
Mm-hmm.
was number one. But
Oh yeah.
even though I knew God was with me,
Right.
I still felt alone because I struggled with my identity. I had chosen to get married. I had chosen to have children.
Right.
I did not choose to become a widow. I did
Mm-hmm.
not choose to be a single parent.
Oh yeah.
So, and so I needed to know, especially year 3, remember, I
Mm-hmm.
needed to know, how do you see me, God?
So good.
I started doing a scripture study on widows and orphans, just like you have done, and the fatherless, just like you have done, because,
Mm-hmm.
okay, if you want me to embrace my identity, I have to see God. I have to
Yeah.
know that He's going to protect me, He's going to provide for
Mm-hmm.
me.
That's right. Yeah, that's so good.
And perfect love casts out all fear.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be a scary thing to suddenly change overnight
Yes, like
your identity.
yeah, in an instant you become widowed. Like that's a crazy thing. And I forget because I've used the term widow for so long that sometimes new widows, they cringe when you say something about them being widowed. They're like, "Oh, I don't like that word." And I used to hate it in the beginning. It took me some getting used to. I had to kind of like reinvent what a widow is because I thought it was just like super someone like really old with a gray bun with cats crawling on them. Honestly, that's what I thought a widow was. I didn't know. I had no idea. And so I had to reframe the word in my head. And so I have to remember sometimes to be sensitive to new widows because they're like, oh, I don't like, anyways, it's something I've gotten used to, but it was hard in the beginning to be a
Right.
widow. But yeah, it changes overnight. What songs or verses have been helpful for you along your journey?
Well, I'm going to share a secular song because
That's good.
describes my relationship with my husband.
Yeah.
And it's the Celine Dion
Oh,
song
my
that says,
favorite.
"Because You Love Me."
Oh yeah, I got it in my head right there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, my husband and I, we'd gone to see the movie with Robert Redford, Michelle Pfeiffer.
Uh-huh.
Neither one of us looked like those characters or whatever. But
Uh-huh.
quite honestly, David supported my dreams.
Mm,
I mean, he was there for me. He was my constant. So, suddenly to lose that, um, I felt like I was losing a part of myself.
right.
So,
Yeah.
w- back to the ballroom dancing.
Yeah.
Before we went to Italy, I danced uh, a bolero to that song in memory of him.
Mm. Oh, that's beautiful. But I don't know what a bolero is, but it sounds beautiful. What does that mean?
it kind of looks like uh, ice skating
Oh,
on
okay.
the dance floor. It's very
Oh, okay.
graceful or very whatever.
Sounds beautiful. Yeah.
But he's the reason why I was able to get my doctorate. He
Mm-hmm.
he
You're
just supported my dreams, and he would love the idea of me writing. He would have supported my
mm-hmm.
writing. So to lose a person who's always got your back, who's always believing in you,
Right.
sometimes even more than we believe in ourselves.
Yep.
That was uh, powerful.
Yeah.
So
Your
he
strength.
always knew. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes. So because he loved me so much, it took away all my insecurities,
Mm.
right?
That's awesome. Yeah.
So with him being gone,
Right.
those
Yeah.
insecurities rose up again. So I
Mm-hmm.
had to get to know the Father, the Heavenly Father.
Right.
And because I know he loves me, 1 John 4:18, there's no fear in love, but perfect love casts out all fear.
So good.
So when I'm afraid, when I used to be afraid as a child during storms, and sometimes even as adults, I'll start singing Jesus loves me
Mm-hmm.
because then I don't have to be afraid.
Right. So good. And what advice would you give to a brand new baby widow?
I'm sorry, you're going to have some pain.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason why you feel the pain is because you love that person so much. But the love doesn't have to go away.
It's good.
The pain will eventually fade, but the love will always be there. And it's
Mm-hmm.
okay. You can keep that love.
Yep. No matter what, no matter if you date again, get married again, like I still love Luke, but I love Joel, you'll can always keep that love. Always.
Exactly.
It's beautiful.
And
That's
you just have to give yourself grace. I would find out who you are in God's eyes.
mm-hmm.
You know, study the scriptures because knowing that he will protect and provide for you
Yep.
is one of his promises.
Yep. Exactly. So good. Well, thank you. This has been so wonderful. Like, we have a very similar passion with writing, and we're both launching books around the same time. And I'm excited to see what God does through your book and books and all the things that you're doing. So I'd love
I have
to.
enough. I'm going
Oh,
to
go
write
ahead.
more. I'm
You're
going to
gonna
write
write
more
more.
stories for
What
children.
do
Yes.
you? Oh, awesome! Like a series, or what do you think?
I'm not sure if it's going to be a series or not, or if it's just going to be individual books, but the next one's going to be a boy book.
Cool. That's
And there
good.
will be a different kind of loss.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, how many different ways can we lose a loved one?
Lots.
And how many different families and cultures and situations? But it's
Right.
still, all of these impact kids.
Yes, they do. Yep. And sometimes those kids like don't get the counseling, they don't get the tools.
The
Like my
parents
kids.
may not know what to do either.
Yes. So there's another really good book. It's made for adults. It's called When Children Grieve. And it's also it's through I've taught a class through it called Helping Children with Loss, and it's another really, if you guys are looking for a resource, When Children Grieve, it's put out by the Grief Recovery Institute, which is I do basically like counseling through them, and it's a great one too that has resources. I mean, it's a big thick book, it's not like a kid's book, but that one's really good. But we need to have tools to help our kids, and I think one of the best things that I learned is to make your house, your home, a safe place to talk about your late spouse, to talk about their dad. Like we would constantly, and we'll still mention him now, but we would constantly in the beginning be like, oh, what do you think daddy would think about this? Oh, daddy would like this. Like we kept him part of everything, and creating that safe environment so that your kids feel like they can talk about them. Like I've met some people where they say their kids don't talk about him. Like it's like taboo to talk about him, but we need to keep it open, keep that communication open with our
They pick
kids.
up on our cues. If we don't want to talk,
Exactly.
we don't want to
Uh-huh.
talk about it, then that tells our kids they can't.
Right. And it's going to, just like with adults, if they just bury their grief and never work through it, it's going to come up later. Like you've got to work through it. You have to go through it.
I met someone through LinkedIn that is part of
Mm-hmm.
the BUDSI,
I don't know what that is.
BUDSIE, and people can actually have this sounds odd, but they can have a picture of their loved one and they can
Mm.
turn it into like a stuffed um,
Oh, that's cute. I
thing
guess like
to hold on to. So
yeah.
they're
That's cute. So after Luke died, his mom got all of the kids pillows of Luke. But the funny thing is we just laughed about it because he would have thought they were so funny. It ended up being like a pillow with his face like bigger than life size on all of their pillows, and they were like, this just makes me feel kind of weird. I don't like it's anyways, we just had a good laugh about it, and they put it in their closet because it was like so big and life size that they didn't like it. I guess it depends on age too. Mine were like teenagers. But like I
and
could
if
see
it's a
like
smaller thing, maybe.
right. This was like bigger. I'm like, your dad wouldn't have loved that, his face that big, but he would have just laughed about this. And they all still have them, I believe, and some of them are, I think they're all in the closets now. But yeah. Anyways,
Can,
well, oh, go ahead.
can I share one more thing?
Yes,
I
please.
had a quilt that was on our bed, and it got ratty, couldn't be fixed. So I gave the quilt to a friend that does quilting, and I said, "Could you make something new out of this?" And so this is what she made.
Aw, that's cute. It's like this beautiful
Just a little
heart.
pillow, like a
Mm-hmm.
little pillow cover or whatever.
Cute.
And I think that's what we can do with our memories. We can make something new.
That's right. So good. It'll never look exactly the same, but it can still be new and beautiful in a different
Yeah,
way.
because
That's how I feel about my life now. It's beautiful in a different way, but we can still, yeah, have something beautiful. Well, I'd love to close by praying for you. Would that be okay?
I would love it.
Okay. Dear God, thank you so much for Jerry and her willingness to be here. Thank you for the stories that you have put in her heart to write. I just pray blessings over her books as they get out into the world, the ones that she just launched, especially, God, that you will just do abundantly more than all she can ask or imagine with these books, that it's just they go far and wide and they help children literally all over the world. And I just thank you for giving her that talent to write the books. And thank you for her faith. Thank you for her stepping out and learning ballroom dancing, and just the inspiration that I know that she is right now to all these new widows who are like, I don't even want to do anything. But hearing Jerry's story today has given them courage to try something new. God, and I just thank you for every listener here today, that you would cover them with the peace that passes all understanding. I just pray for joy to be in their lives today. Something today would make them smile and laugh, and they wouldn't feel guilty about it, because the joy of the Lord is my strength. And I just pray for them that they know that it's not always going to hurt this bad, God. And I just pray that you continue to bring people into their lives to help them, support them, and love them. We just thank you for all you've done. Amen.
Amen.
Well, if you like this podcast, give it a little bing, 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen. You guys have heard me say that a billion times, but it really does help get the word out if you take a moment to review the podcast. And a special ask, if you have read my book, there's a link in the show notes if you could review it. Jerry knows this. Our Amazon reviews are so important. If you could take just a moment to just give it the stars you think it deserves. And if you have time to write something, that means a lot to us. It helps get the word out to everyone. And make sure you get a copy of Jerry's book, all of them. Would you say if they had to choose one, would it be Joy Overcame Sorrow? Would that be the one that you would say this is number one? I mean, it's hard to choose, right?
It is hard to choose. They're different experiences, but I think Joy Overcame Sorrow can address some issues as well, with widows and children.
Yes, for sure. That's awesome. Well, anyways, if you want to be part of our Widow Too Soon community, we are up to almost 13,000 people. There's a link in the show notes. We also have a group just for podcast listeners. There's a link to that. All the things. So thanks everyone for being here. And thank you, Jerry. We really appreciated having you as a guest.
You're welcome.
And everyone, thanks. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.